Good afternoon. Good afternoon, all. Here we are in Speaker's Corner again.
Yes.
Me and Brother Hudson.
Greetings.
Greetings. Another afternoon dwindling away. You know, the September chill is kicking in slowly and surely. I quite like September though. But
Yeah.
what we want to talk about today is why I believe that Islam has a false theology. I believe that Islam, I'm not going to go into the Quran. I'm not really concerned about different parts of the Quran right now, but I want to talk about how I believe that Islam is false for a very simple reason for me. That is the God figure, Allah. This God figure. He's distant. He really doesn't really intervene with his creation. He doesn't even intervene with the Prophet. He sends angels. Then there is no relationship between me, the worshipper, and Allah. Hence the word Islam, slavery. I submit in a slave manner. There is no one-to-one relationship.
No intimacy.
Distant. Is he really there? That's the question we should be asking. That's how I see it. And I think this is a false theology. How do you see that?
Yes, I agree. I mean, I do agree. And also, to add to that, this seems to be, if we want, acceptable. You know, Muslims will say yes. The Quran and Islamic history and scholars say yes. God does not intervene in that way. God does not intervene in human history. God does not come into human history. God is quite distant. God speaks through angels and spirits and jinns or whatever, but God himself is distant. He speaks behind a veil. And it's interesting because what we have, so basically what we have is, if you go to Islam, you're kind of gone back to very much an extent where we were at certain times in the Old Testament. You know?
I go one step further.
Yeah,
I go to a paganistic God.
Yes.
Where we don't really know God.
Yes.
We don't know
Yes.
God.
Yes. And without talking about the rights and wrongs or in terms of truths and falsehoods, but picture the contrast. The Christian faith says that God has come to us and God has entered human history. And this is not an issue. I'm not bringing this up to say, therefore Islam's wrong and this way is right. I'm just looking at a contrast. One, you have God is not concerned with human nature to the extent that he doesn't bother. He creates it and it's there and he keeps himself a distance. And at certain points in the Old Testament, this is what we had, where this is the whole nature of God taking on a human form, because God is eternal and he's not a part of his creation. He stands outside of creation. He stands out time and space. But God has chosen, Christians believe and understand, he's not part of creation, he's not in creation, he stands outside of it, but he has chosen to take that initiative. And so when I look at Islam, I look at, it's almost like backwards, or it stopped at a certain point. And 1400 years later, God is still a mystery, God is still unknown. The contrast being that, likewise, this same God that Muslims claim to believe in, who is eternal, who is invisible, who stands outside of time and space, stands outside of his creation because he has created that creation. Likewise in the Christian faith, God is all of these things. So there's that connection there. God stands outside of time and space, outside of creation. He has created creation and he's created human beings. But the contrast is, in the Christian faith, God has chosen to take that one step further and stepped into human time and space that he himself has created. So I just want to look at that contrast. And it's a wide one. And here, as I said, it's not an issue of right and wrong, but that's a contrast. So therefore, I cannot make this connection that people would have me make, that we are talking about the same God. Where on one hand he's distant. The same God is both distant and not distant at the same time. No.
But I agree with that.
Yeah.
Not only that, there's also another difference that I find is that the God of the Bible in the Old Testament gives us the old covenant, a covenant, and in the New Testament gives us a new covenant. But what he gives us as well is a promise. And the promise, in a way, in simple terms, is if you do this, I will deliver.
Yes.
And that delivering, it truly is delivering. It gives us eternal life. In Islam, that promise isn't clear. Does Allah really promise eternal life? Do you know of a surah, ayah, Hudson, where Allah promises?
No.
And he binds himself
No.
to give eternal life?
On the contrary, actually, if you look at the history of Islam, and other bits of material, including the Quran itself, on the contrary, not only does Allah not do that, he's actually not about doing that. It's not about surety, it's about if Allah wills. It's
Yeah.
about inshallah.
This to me is a false theology. I think we have to be very clear when we look at the two Godheads that we are not speaking about the same God. We're not speaking about the God of Abraham, Moses, Jesus. We're clearly not speaking about the God of the Bible.
So we're looking at the contrast here, innit? The contrast is just too wide to come to the conclusion, unless somebody explains something that I've not heard before, to come to the conclusion that this is the same God.
Yeah,
That's
no.
both distant and not distant at
No,
the same
this-
time. It's the very same God.
No, this claim is a claim of, it's nonsense. It's just not the same God. We don't have to go into the history of
Yes.
the term Allah, the moon God. We don't have to go into that. But the term, when they say it's the same God, the God of Jacob, the God of Moses, the God of Abraham, this just is not true.
So, there's that question again, who is Allah? Because in the scriptures, it tells us who God is. God has personalized himself. Whereas in Islam had not only not personalized himself, that's something to be credited. That's something to be proud of. Allah chose not to do this, and it's a kind of, Allah chosen to remain distant. Allah chosen to be arbitrary. If he decides at the end of the day, regardless if a Muslim could do all the things that Allah himself has said they must do, there's still no surety.
Absolutely.
This is the contrast.
And
This is not
this
the same being.
This is quite dangerous. And in my view, the best thing we could do as a great man says on the internet, stay away from Islam.
Stay away from Islam.